Doubt lingers when you're forced to take desperate measures. What decisions could have prevented this mess? What actions might have kept me out of this predicament? I was pretty sure my options were limited. How do you get an adult to see that their actions could ruin everything they hold dear? You can't force them into anything. You can only watch helplessly and deal with the aftermath. That's exactly where I found myself. My wife, who once seemed so loving, believed this would make us stronger, showing how deep our love was. To me, it showed how weak her love was, highlighting her selfishness and indulgence. I'm just an average guy living a regular life. I'm not some resilient, tender romantic hero. Like anyone else, I have my flaws. I often focus too much on myself, work too much, and sometimes I get angry for no good reason. It's not on purpose, it just happens. I'm only human. Life, work, and other events often disrupt our routine. Ariana and I have been married for 19 years, sharing intimate moments a couple of times a week. It was always enjoyable, and we were both eager for more whenever we had the time. Hobbies like football, good books, or TV shows, along with raising our kids, sometimes took our attention away, but we always made time when it mattered. Our marriage was smooth sailing, our finances were getting better, and our daughters, Elena and Serena, who are 16 and 14, brought so much joy to our lives. While I saw myself as ordinary, they were extraordinary. Life was great until my wife started having unconventional ideas. She called our sex life plain vanilla and insisted we needed to spice things up. I was happy with how things were, but I agreed to go along with it. At first, we tried different positions, which I enjoyed because I'm in good shape, but the novelty wore off after a few times. Then she wanted to try role-playing, something I couldn't understand. Where did this idea come from? Her friends, women's magazines, or some TV show? It was fun for a while, but it eventually seemed impractical. Trying to focus on a hot woman while pretending to be Leonardo DiCaprio or imagining she was Scarlett Johansson was too much. I refused to continue, and that's when she got upset. She asked me when the last time I went on a date was. I told her that just last Friday, I took her to that Italian place she wanted to try. We went to the movies, and her mom watched the girls overnight. She clarified that she didn't mean with her. She wanted to know how long it had been since I went out with someone else. I asked if she was accusing me of something. She quickly said she wasn't, and just wondered if I remembered the name of the last girl I went out with before her. I said her name was Lana. About 2 weeks after I met her, we had a big argument about that date. When she asked if I ever missed it, I laughed and said, "God, no." Dating was awful. Not the date itself, which was fine, but the whole process. Asking a girl out, worrying about being rejected, awkward first conversations. It was all traumatic and terrifying. She then asked what brought this on. I told her I was just wondering if she ever felt like going out on a date with someone else. She assured me she never did. She reminded me how upset she was when I went out with Lana and that she wanted us to be exclusive. I agreed and said I wanted the same. I added that if I felt differently, I wouldn't have asked her to marry me. Being married means you don't date other people. She dropped the subject, and I didn't hear about it again for a month. One Friday night, we had just finished making love without any role-playing or gimmicks. It was just us, a man and his wife enjoying each other. I came twice, and she must have climaxed half a dozen times. We lay there in post-pleasure bliss. Then she brought up something that ruined the mood. Ariana mentioned how Mila, her co-worker, had been looking at me and suggested she wanted me to ask her to dance. I assured Ariana it was flattering, but I only wanted to dance with her. She said she told Mila she wouldn't be jealous if I asked her to dance. I replied it was nice of her, but made it clear I had no intention of asking Mila to dance. Ariana then asked if she would be jealous if I danced with another man. I tried to joke that her brother would be okay, but she didn't find it funny. She clarified that she didn't mind if I danced with women who were polite and kept their hands to themselves. She asked if there was anyone at the event I wanted to dance with. I said I didn't remember anyone asking me, and she accepted that, saying she was just curious. I had no idea where this was going, but I felt uncomfortable. Unable to sleep, I got up and went to the den to play a video game. She came to the door and watched me for a moment, but I didn't look at her. She went back to bed, and I joined her once she was asleep. Everything was quiet for 2 months until the promotion party at the Monroe Rhino, where there was a great band. We sat in a big circular booth, and Ariana was talking to Mila. Ariana mentioned that Mila wanted to dance and asked if I could be a gentleman and dance with her. Remembering our conversation from 2 months ago, I felt awkward. I valued Mila's friendship and didn't want to hurt her feelings, but I didn't want to dance with her either. The thought of her lush body against mine made me uneasy, but I didn't know how to decline politely. I enjoyed dancing, but I wasn't confident, especially compared to Mila, who moved gracefully like a cat. Seeing no way out, I stood up and said I thought they were playing our song. Mila joined me, her brown thighs visible below her short blue dress. As the song ended, the band started a slow number, and I wondered why now. Mila fit against me perfectly, her bust pressed against my chest, her black curls almost covering my face. She had a pleasant scent, and when she gazed up at me, her large brown eyes seemed like liquid pools, her teeth gleaming white against her warm complexion. She wasn't dark-skinned, more of a creamy coffee color. After the dance, Mila thanked me, mentioning that Ariana assured her I wouldn't mind. I complimented her dancing but admitted I did mind, explaining that while I liked her a lot and thought she was the sweetest girl I knew, dancing with her wasn't a good idea for me. She laughed and assured me I was safe with her, expressing affection, and noting that if I weren't married, she'd be all over me. Nonetheless, she emphasized the importance of our friendship and suggested we enjoy that one dance. I gave her a little squeeze, and we finished the song. Returning to the booth, Ariana was nowhere to be seen. I scanned the room and saw her black and white dress across the dance floor. She was laughing with some young Nordic-looking guy, his hands lower than they should have been. She noticed me looking for her, smiled, and waved. My anger flared up. She had set me up with Mila so she could dance with that fool. I tossed a couple of 20s on the table and headed for the exit. Mila watched me, then ran after me as I neared the door. She caught up, a bit out of breath, and asked where I was going. I told her we were being played. Ariana had been hinting at dating other people and questioning me about it. This was a setup, and she used Mila as an excuse to dance. Mila asked what I was doing and if I was just going to leave Ariana there. I confirmed it. She grabbed my arm, feeling guilty, and apologized. I reassured her, saying I didn't like being played any more than she did. She asked for a ride to my house to get her car. As we neared home, my phone buzzed, but I ignored it. Mila glanced at me when her phone rang, and she answered it. She told Ariana we were almost at my house and explained it wasn't her idea to leave. She wasn't about to be stranded. Mila warned Ariana not to put her in that position and hung up. She then informed me that Ariana wanted me to go back and get her. I expressed my frustration with Ariana's childish games, sighing and wondering where this was coming from. Mila explained that a coworker, Sophie, had been talking about having an open marriage, claiming it improved their sex life. She and her husband, Liam, hardly talked and spent their time trying to involve their friends. Ariana fell for it, and Mila believed she was trying to set us up. I was stunned when Mila mentioned that Ariana knew she had always been attracted to me. I almost choked and apologized for the awkward situation. Mila admitted she found me attractive, but emphasized that she preferred one partner and wasn't good at sharing. She reassured me, saying she had nothing to do with Ariana's actions. I promised to keep her updated on what happened, and she left in her car. Entering the house, I gathered my belongings from the master bath and moved them to the guest room. I also retrieved my work items and placed them there, locking the door. I went to sleep, possibly helped by the drinks it had. I was partially awakened by the slamming door downstairs and footsteps in the hallway. The doorknob to the bedroom twisted a few times, followed by a tap on the door. I heard Ariana's whisper, careful not to wake the girls, asking what was going on. The tapping and whispering went on for about 10 minutes before her footsteps retreated to what used to be our bedroom. Oddly, I found myself disliking the guest bed. Trying to slip away before she woke up in the morning, I failed. She came downstairs while I packed files into my briefcase. She, clearly angry, demanded to know what was wrong with me. I snapped back, saying maybe she should ask herself that question. Her voice rose, asking what that was supposed to mean. I picked up my briefcase, saying everything I did was a reaction to her actions. I told her I didn't want to look at her right now, warning how close she was to making me permanently angry. I instructed her to get her act together and be ready to talk when I got home. I mentioned I would pick up the girls and take them to Mom's to settle the matter. Her face went pale, and she claimed not to understand what I was talking about, suggesting she might have plans for the night. I told her it was up to her, saying if she wanted to fix things, She should be ready and stop making excuses. I added that if she was fine with the status quo, she could do whatever she wanted. I finished by telling her to move her belongings into the spare bedroom because I liked my bed, making it clear she wasn't welcome in it. She puffed up, but I left and went to work. I picked up the girls from school, and they happily went to Grandma's for the evening. I informed Mom that Ariana and I were having some issues and needed time alone. She hugged me and expressed her love. I was grateful not to have to answer a bunch of questions. Ariana was there when I got home. She had made cookies, and a plate of them and a cup of coffee were waiting for me. She hugged me for a moment, kissed my cheek, and sat beside me on the sofa. I helped myself to a cookie, oatmeal with chocolate chips and M&Ms. It seemed like we were off to a good start, and I hated to ruin the peace. I told Ariana I was upset about what she did the previous night. I emphasized that her actions were hurtful to me, embarrassing for both of us, and disrespectful to Mila, who was supposed to be her friend. Ariana struggled to look me in the eye and muttered an apology for her actions. Reflecting on my own behavior, I realized I could have handled things differently. My intention was to open up a line of communication, as she had consistently shut me down before. I thought this approach might get her to consider different perspectives. When I asked what she had been thinking, Ariana hesitated before blurting out that she had been contemplating dating other people. I was taken aback and told her there were several issues with that idea, the first being that we were both married. She countered by saying other married couples do it, citing open marriages as a way to strengthen their love. Skeptical, I asked her for examples. She mentioned Sophie and Liam, claiming they had an open marriage that improved their relationship. I doubted her information and suggested we verify it by searching online. She seemed a bit surprised, but agreed to sit beside me as I powered up my laptop. I typed in, "How many people have open marriages?" and clicked on the first link. The results showed that less than 1% of Americans are in open marriages. We checked several other sources, and they all confirmed the same statistic. Ariana seemed shocked and mentioned that it still represented a significant number, estimating at least 3 million. I suggested a different search. How many Americans expect their partners to be faithful? We found that more than 95% of Americans expect fidelity in their relationships. I asked Ariana what she thought that meant. She replied that it indicated most people aren't open-minded, and she had expected to see more people living alternative lifestyles because she heard about it so often. I wondered aloud how many of these open marriages end in divorce. Despite her reluctance, I insisted on finding out. Typing in, "How many open marriages end in divorce?" we discovered that 92% of open marriages end in divorce within 5 years. I broke it down saying, less than 1% of Americans are in open marriages. Out of 1 million people, fewer than 10,000 are in open marriages. If 92% of those end in divorce, that means out of those 10,000, only 800 will still be together after 5 years. That's 800 out of 1 million. I asked Ariana to consider the odds of success for an open marriage, especially when 92% of 1% fail. She admitted the chances weren't very good. I pointed out that the few successful ones were where both partners were fully on board. I highlighted that 100% of marriages where one partner is coerced into it fail. Our situation would fall into that category since I wasn't willing. I explained how feelings of resentment, jealousy, and insecurity would ruin us if I went along with this. I reassured her that I wasn't desperate to keep her under such circumstances, mentioning that other women found me attractive. If I were a pathetic loser or a sick individual, I might play her game, but I wasn't that man. I told her I'd rather she shoot me in the head than break my heart. Ariana weakly argued that not everything on the internet is true. I acknowledged that, noting there's plenty of misinformation, especially about open marriages. I questioned her trust in Sophie, asking if she believed everything Sophie said and pointing out Sophie's multiple divorces. When Ariana didn't know about Sophie's husband, I dug deeper and found out Sophie had been divorced 4 times. Shocked, I remarked that Ariana was taking advice from someone who had failed at marriage 4 times. She defended Sophie, saying she and Liam had a strong marriage. Expressing my frustration, I asked Ariana where she got all this information. She revealed that Sophie constantly talked about it and that she and Liam barely communicated, spending their time trying to engage in intimacy with friends. I asked Ariana how she thought this situation would end. She suggested our sex life had become stale. I disagreed, saying I was perfectly happy. I pointed out that her desire for role-playing had made things weird, and reminded her how she had climaxed half a dozen times the last time. I questioned if those were Sophie's ideas, and her expression confirmed they were. I expressed disbelief and frustration, emphasizing that our marriage was strong and rejecting her suggestions. She argued that it could be exciting to share experiences. I responded that it sounded like a nightmare, and challenged her claim about men's fantasies, suggesting she Google it. I made it clear that any involvement in such matters would end our relationship. Ariana looked shocked and asked what "we're through" meant. She wondered if it meant divorce, and seemed disappointed, believing our marriage meant more. I echoed her disappointment, doubting the strength of our marriage based on her willingness to entertain such ideas. I asked what she would tell our daughters if we split up, refuting her claim that it would be because I couldn't accept her having other relationships. I stated that the truth would be that their mother didn't love their father enough to honor her marriage vows and provide a stable home. I accused her of putting her desires above the well-being of our family. As our anger escalated, she declared her determination to go through with it, stating it was inevitable. I firmly rejected her proposal, warning her of the inevitable consequences. I told her that our marriage would never survive if she pursued this path, and I would consult a lawyer the moment she did. I gave her a choice: forget about this nonsense and work on our marriage, or we could go our separate ways and start the divorce process immediately. I suggested therapy to understand why she was acting irrationally, although I doubted it would work. I attributed her misguided ideas to Sophie's influence and warned that nothing good would come from this. I made it clear that I would not sit by and watch her ruin our family. I demanded to know her plans and challenged her to rethink her actions. She taunted me, claiming she had the freedom to do as she pleased and that I couldn't stop her. She argued I wouldn't divorce her because I feared losing everything and threatened to take the girls and the house, leaving me with alimony and child support. I told her to think carefully about the situation and not to act rashly. Despite her claims of love, I refused her proposal, emphasizing that her idea of excitement was nothing but a recipe for disaster. I stood my ground, expressing the seriousness of the situation and rejecting her plea to experiment with open marriage. She approached me, trying to embrace and kiss me, but I pushed her away. "Don't touch me. I need to think about this," I said, standing up. "I'll let you know what I decide." It was a lie. I didn't need time to think. I needed time to plan. She was probably right about the complexities of divorce. The system is a mess. I needed to make strategic moves. I left her and went to the master bedroom, locking the door behind me. After spending some time on the computer and the phone, I had a financial plan in place. The real issue was the girls. Under Georgia law, where we lived in Atlanta, children over 14 get to choose their custodial parent. I was confident about Serena, my daddy's girl, but Elena was a different story. She loved me, but she also adored her mother. I hoped that if I could explain Ariana's intentions to use them as leverage for her open marriage, they would want nothing to do with her. It was a cynical plan, and I hated it. But I wasn't the one changing the rules. If Ariana had told me before we got married that she'd want to explore other relationships after 19 years, I would have walked away. She knew that, and she would have done the same. Now she wanted to change the rules and force me into compliance, using extortion tactics. 2 nights later, we had another conversation. Ariana started with an apology that I wasn't inclined to accept. I questioned her about the idea of seeing a therapist and engaging in marriage counseling. She denied having any issues and shifted the blame to me, claiming I wanted to be with other women. I pointed out the contradiction, and she insisted she wasn't planning anything specific, just suggesting we keep the option open. I shared my perspective, revealing that I had opportunities to cheat over the years, but stayed faithful out of commitment. I emphasized the importance of planning for a successful marriage and criticized her lack of commitment. I expressed concern about the impact on our promises to each other, our children, and even to God. Despite her defensive response, I questioned how the girls would perceive her betrayal, asserting that she wouldn't be telling them anything. Later that day, Ariana threatened that as their mother, she would undoubtedly get custody of the kids. She vowed to make visitations difficult and cautioned me not to say a word to them. After a heated exchange, she stormed off, creating enough noise for anyone nearby to hear. I heard a couple of faint gasps and a muffled sob. When I reached the stairs, the girls were gone. I went to Serena's room, then to Elena's, where I heard hushed voices inside. I knocked, and Elena asked what I wanted. I asked to come in, and she opened the door. Both of them had been crying. Sitting between them, I hugged them and expressed regret that they had to witness such a conversation. I explained that they wouldn't have believed me unless they heard it themselves. Elena reassured me, saying it wasn't my fault and placing the blame on her mother. She said she didn't initially believe me but now understood. Serena expressed disbelief at her mother's actions, questioning how she could do such a thing to me and to them. I admitted I didn't know why Ariana was doing this, saying she had been influenced by negative people at work. I shared my unsuccessful attempts to change her mind and mentioned her lack of concern for the family. Serena asked if Ariana was unwell, and I said I had no idea about her current motivations. I suggested therapy and marriage counseling, but Ariana showed no interest. Serena asked what they should do, and I advised them to do nothing for now. I explained my plan to wait until Ariana thought I had given up, anticipating her going on a date. At that point, we would be ready to leave. I doubted she would listen, even if I tried to talk her out of it. I asked both of them if they were with me, or wanted to stay with their mother. Serena exchanged a look with Elena before saying, "No, Dad, we're going with you." My heart lifted, finding solace in their support after 19 years of disappointment. Over the next 2 months, Ariana and I barely communicated, living like distant roommates. She moved into the spare bedroom while I stayed in our former shared space. Despite my efforts to engage her in conversation and dissuade her from her chosen path, our interactions were strained. One evening, while we were working in the garden, I brought up the subject again. I asked her if our marriage was really getting stronger, where the passionate lovemaking she envisioned was, and if the situation was as exciting and fulfilling as she had hoped. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes, quickly replaced by anger. She snapped back, asserting that everything was my fault and that I was the one who had caused this mess. I voiced my disapproval when my wife mentioned her plans to engage with others, making it clear that I wasn't on board with the idea. She shot back, insisting that I was the problem. During our heated argument, she practically yelled that I needed to look at the bright side of things. According to her, everything would be perfect if I just let go of my stubborn pride. I questioned what this so-called perfection looked like and for whom it would be ideal. From where I stood, the situation was far from perfect and certainly not in my favor. I challenged her claim that she loved me more, emphasizing that my love was shown by giving her freedom while staying committed myself. To me, her desire to explore and push boundaries seemed selfish, not an expression of love. I made it clear that my love for her meant not engaging in relationships with others, and if she truly loved me, she would do the same. I asked Ariana when she had stopped loving me. She tearfully denied it, claiming her love for me had only grown stronger. I countered, saying her actions felt like driving a stake through my heart. In response, she became furious and announced her plan to go to a club with a colleague, Jack Monroe, on Friday night. She insisted that I join them, promising it would be an exciting experience. Reluctantly, I agreed, figuring that since she was going to do it anyway, I might as well tag along. As she rushed across the garden, she hugged me tightly, thanking me for my willingness to participate. Despite her reassurances, I was already filled with regret and found the situation unbearable. I contemplated seeking support from Mila and decided to give her a call. Mila was furious when she heard about the plan. She expressed her anger, saying she had no idea she was being set up to be with me when Ariana invited her to go clubbing with Jack Monroe. Upon learning the full plan, she vowed to confront Ariana. I asked for her help and trust, assuring her that I needed her assistance in this critical moment as I was planning to leave Ariana. Initially, Mila expressed her distrust, but after I calmed her down, I explained my plan to pretend to be okay with the situation and asked her to play along by going home with me. She hesitated for a moment before laughing and questioning the sincerity of my plan, suspecting it might be a ploy to get her into my house. Amused, I admitted it was indeed a scheme and clarified that I needed her help moving the girls to my new place while I retrieved our belongings from the house. Surprisingly, she found the vengeful aspect of the plan appealing and agreed to participate. Throughout the week leading up to Friday, Ariana acted unusually close, as if there were no tomorrow. On Friday, before heading to work, I asked her once more if she was absolutely certain about her decision, and suggested she could still call off the plan. I reminded her of the enjoyable week we had spent together, but she remained resolute, assuring me we could discuss it afterward if needed. She thanked me for my willingness to go along with her plan and promised that the upcoming night would be the best yet. As she danced out of the bedroom, I thought sourly, she knew I was going to love this, right? Let's get this day over with. When Mila stopped by the house on Friday evening, she looked absolutely stunning. Ariana was cute, petite, and slender, with a face that belonged on a teenager, but Mila was in a whole different league. She was tall, with one of those bubble butts you hear so much about but rarely see. Ariana was a bit flat back there. Mila wore a short, tight red sheath dress adorned with sequins, looking breathtaking. I was dressed in a sport coat, black pants, and a ribbed t-shirt under the coat. As she entered, she playfully commented on my attire, suggesting I was attempting to seduce her. I clarified that it was strictly business that evening, reserving any such intentions for another time. She expressed regret at the missed opportunity, mentioning that she was wearing a thong, believing it would be to my liking. Playfully, I asked her to show me, drawing her closer with my hands on the hem of her dress, lifting it teasingly up her legs. She warned about Ariana potentially entering at any moment, but I insisted, emphasizing the need for Ariana to think I was participating in her game. We shared a moment of laughter as I continued the playful interaction. Just as I was about to appreciate the delightful view in front of me, Ariana entered the room unexpectedly. There was a moment of surprise, and Mila quickly adjusted her dress. Ariana greeted us with a smile, commenting on the apparent early start to our evening. I responded with a playful suggestion that she and Jack should be the ones getting a room. Ariana smirked at us, picked up her clutch, and we headed out for the night. Jack met us at the club, and I don't think the evening started the way he'd expected. I shook his hand and just crushed it. I've been powerlifting for years, and one thing it does if you lift without straps is it gives you quite a grip. I could see him start to go weak in the knees, and I let him go. You could tell he wanted to whimper and nurse his hand, but his macho image wouldn't let him. He was one of those pretty boys. Have you ever noticed that as men approach what some women would call ideal, the likelihood of them being a hairdresser or a Scientologist goes up to near infinity? Observing Jack, I drew a parallel with Tom Cruise. Curious, I inquired if he was a hairdresser, to which he chuckled and dismissed the idea, stating that hairdressers are predominantly gay. Acknowledging this, I brought up L. Ron Hubbard and revealed my affiliation with Scientology for 6 years, explaining that I was testing a theory. Mila, having heard my theory before, was on the verge of choking and seemed ready to burst into laughter. Glancing at Ariana, who was visibly seething with anger, I realized I might have shared too many private theories with Mila. Deciding to change the subject, Mila suggested finding a booth and marched away with a tense posture, with Mr. Jack trailing behind her at a safe distance. Once he was out of earshot, Mila burst into laughter, and I couldn't help but join her. "You're a mean man, Lucas," she said with a grin. "Yeah, well, it's been quite a night," I replied, nudging her to get herself together and play the part of seducing me. Mila was a natural, and by the time we reached the booth, I was thoroughly entranced. After dancing with her twice, she did everything short of getting too close right there on the dance floor. Meanwhile, Ariana was busy with Mr. Jack when we got back, and I asked Mila, "Ready for the big show?" Her eyes met mine, and I saw that this wasn't just fun and games for her. Those deep, radiant brown eyes pulled me in, and her full, inviting lips parted slightly as she moistened them with her tongue. I couldn't resist. I had to kiss her, and it surpassed all my expectations. Suddenly, I heard a noise, and Ariana and Mr. Jack slid back into the booth. "Oh no!" I exclaimed, mimicking a Saturday Night Live skit. "Look who's back!" Mila caught on, and so did Ariana, but Mr. Jack remained clueless. Mila chuckled and advised against being mean to him. Ariana's face puffed up like a blowfish, and her smug smirk vanished. I told them that Mila and I were planning to leave and suggested they enjoy themselves. Ariana walked us to the door, asking if I was okay, noting I had been acting like an idiot earlier. I told her I wasn't okay and urged her to leave with me now, suggesting we go home and try to work things out. I warned her that if she stayed, it would be a permanent decision. She seemed excited, saying this would be great for us, and urged me to enjoy myself, assuring it would be awesome. She told me not to be an idiot. I shot back, hinting at her interest in Mr. Jack, not me, and said we were leaving. She grabbed my arm, insisting it would be a great experience, emphasizing that Mila was interested in me. I teased her about spending the night with Mr. Jack, questioning his stamina. She hesitated, saying she might get home around midnight, planning to spice things up with him. I slapped my forehead, remembering their plans. I told her to be quiet if Mila and I were still busy when she returned. She kissed me, and I hoped she enjoyed it, knowing it would be the last one. I left and got into the car where Mila was waiting. She asked if I was sure about my decision, given how long I had been married. I sighed and confirmed that I was sure. She remarked on my calm demeanor, surprised I wasn't more upset. I explained that I had run out of emotional energy after being upset for so long. I clarified that I was just tired now, wanting the ordeal to be over. I told her I had cried countless tears, but that phase was over, and it was time to move on. I suggested we go get the girls. When we arrived, we saw the moving truck already being loaded. The girls were busy hauling their clothes downstairs and packing them in large plastic tubs. We only took essential furniture like the bed from the master suite, the girls' beds, their TVs and electronics, and the big screen we had replaced 6 months ago with an even larger one. Once the girls were done packing, Mila took them in her car to our new place, which was as far from the old one as possible while still being in the same school district. The movers finished, and I took a final look around. The house was empty and silent, with 19 years of memories lingering. With a sigh, I took off my wedding ring and placed it on the kitchen table next to my cell phone. The girls' phones were already there, signaling it was time to go. A sense of melancholy surrounded me as I left with a few petty jabs at Ariana and Mr. Jack. I was walking away from 19 years of my life. Oh well, things happen. I locked up, loaded my tools into the truck, and left. The girls were excited about the new place, especially the backyard pool. They couldn't wait to try it out the next day. "Do you like that, baby?" I asked Serena. She said, "Yeet." I had no idea what yeet meant, but it sounded positive. Mila was there, looking amazing as always. Even if she were Jennifer Lawrence, I was too tired to care. Not that I'd prefer Jennifer Lawrence over Mila, but you get my point. I think she sensed my exhaustion and gave me a dazzling smile, a quick peck on the cheek, and then she was gone. The lingering scent of her perfume was the only reminder that she had been there. We went to bed, and surprisingly, I slept. Not well, but I did sleep. The next morning, I got up and made coffee, and the girls joined me after a while. We had Danish kringle and chocolate milk for breakfast, while they watched cartoons until noon. Two adorable little bikini-clad bundles of energy splashed in the pool, while I lounged and watched. My mind wandered, wondering what Ariana was doing. She was likely frantic, calling everyone she knew to figure out what had happened. She was going to have a hard time finding us. I wasn't working. I had sold the business and made out well. The girls weren't in school. It was summer vacation. We weren't going anywhere except the grocery store, and we walked or took the bus. The truck was parked in the garage. I was sure she had the police looking for us, but without a car, we'd have a tough time. The only way she could reach us was electronically. She flooded our inboxes with messages, messaged the girls whenever they signed on to social media, and sent tweets and Instagram messages. We read them but didn't respond. Let her find us the hard way. I knew she'd eventually look for me since she had work and bills to pay. I, on the other hand, wasn't making any payments, and I knew she'd fall behind quickly. We had significant equity in the house, and losing it wouldn't be something she'd want. About 3 weeks later, while I was at the grocery store, a private detective approached me. He asked if I was who he thought I was, and I realized right away that Ariana had sent him to find me. He announced that he intended to report my location to her and suggested I call her, hinting at trouble if I didn't. He even threatened to accuse me of stalking if he saw me around. I brushed him off, telling him to take a hike, making it clear I had no plans to contact her. But I didn't need to. The police showed up soon after, and Ariana had spun them a tale about me kidnapping the girls. They asked me to come to the station to sort things out, and when I refused, they arrested me and took me downtown. The girls were taken in another car, and when we arrived at the station, Ariana was already there. She tried to hug the girls, but they pushed her away. A woman escorted them to one room with Ariana while I was taken to another. The cops started grilling me hard. I handed over my identification and pointed out that they already had my driver's license. I kept my mouth shut, saying only that I intended to remain silent and wanted to speak to an attorney. That shut them up quickly, and I overheard one of them grumble that I was lawyering up. They gave me a phone, and I called Mark Chandler, who arrived within 45 minutes as planned. It took about 3 hours to clear everything up. The girls confirmed they were with me willingly and denied any kidnapping, refusing to speak to their mother. Mark took over, pointing out there was no court order on custody, and under Georgia law, both parents were considered equal candidates for custody. He also noted that kids over 14 could choose which parent they wanted to live with. In the end, they had no choice but to let us go. Mila walked out with us, and Ariana trailed behind, begging the girls to talk to her. They climbed into Mila's car and drove off, leaving us alone in the parking lot. Ariana was a wreck, crying her eyes out. She turned those sad eyes to me and fell to her knees. I reminded her how I had begged her not to fool around with Mr. Jack, and since she hadn't listened, why should I care now? She kept pleading, asking me not to treat her this way, and expressing her regret. I agreed to talk and asked where she wanted to go. She begged to go home, not wanting anyone to see her in this state. I suggested going to my place, as I had no interest in going to hers, unsure of who she had been involved with there. She whimpered, but nodded, agreeing to go to my place. "Okay, Lucas, whatever you want. But it's your home too," she said. I didn't argue. She suggested I ride with her, but I declined and called a cab instead. She followed me home, knowing the girls were with Mila and spending the night. I let Ariana in and got her a cup of coffee. We sat at the bar, engulfed in an uncomfortable silence. Silence between us had never felt this awkward since our third date. After a while, she asked what I wanted, and I shot back, asking if I had mentioned wanting anything. She clarified, asking what she needed to do to get me to come home and see the girls. I told her I had no control over her seeing the girls. It was their decision. She accused me of turning the girls against her, suggesting Sophie might have told me about it. I asked if Sophie was some all-knowing oracle. She repeated her question, asking what I wanted. I noted that I hadn't said a word to the girls about her. The only thing I told them was that I was leaving, and they needed to decide who they wanted to live with. When she pressed on, asking who had told them, I revealed that she was the one. Confused, she asked when she would have said anything. I reminded her of that night in the living room when she threatened me, pointing out that the girls were sitting on the stairs, overhearing every word. Her face went pale and she started sobbing, unable to continue. I told her the girls believed she had poisoned their perception, and I shared that belief too. Her pleading was pitiful, reminiscent of my own desperation before. I responded coldly, expressing indifference toward her situation with the girls, stating that she had made this mess and needed to fix it. When she asked what could be done about us, I suggested she file for divorce. She insisted she didn't want a divorce. She just wanted me to come home. I asserted that I considered myself already at home, clarifying that I didn't live with her anymore. She apologized, admitting it was a mistake to push me into this situation and expressing regret. She pleaded for forgiveness, proposing we see a marriage counselor or a therapist. I explained that the issue wasn't that I didn't want it, but that she did. I demanded she file for divorce and warned her that if she didn't do so within a few months, I would. I made it clear I wanted nothing to do with her, considering our relationship beyond repair. Furious, she called me a fool, accusing me of taking all our money by selling the business and emptying our bank accounts. I defended my actions, stating I had sold the business at a significant loss and only took the money I had earned. I emphasized that I didn't have a cent of it left. All of that was true. I had securely stashed the money in an offshore account, knowing it was crucial to do so before the divorce proceedings began. The record showed I sold the business to a Danish company for less than I owed in taxes. I had significantly overpaid the IRS, with the surplus funds held to offset future tax liabilities. Our brokerage accounts remained untouched, although I knew I'd have to give up half to secure the girls' financial future. I had set up a trust for them, ensuring they would be financially comfortable for the next 3 years. As part of my plan, I had been frequenting various grocery stores, Walmarts, and convenience stores in town, using my debit card. I made a point to request cash back every time the machine prompted me to do so. Over the course of several weeks, I had been quietly gathering cash from different stores around town, usually between $160 and $200 each time, involving 3 people in each transaction. This strategy quickly built up a sizable amount of cash. All transactions were legitimate, and I had a significant stash hidden in an old chest in a storage unit, ready to be used when the time was right. When I confronted Ariana, I told her she could keep the house. The equity in it was more than enough for her to sell, clear the mortgage, and get by for a while. I suggested she might even consider moving in with Mr. Jack, and mused aloud about how his wife might react to that. Ariana looked shocked, claiming she didn't know he was married. I pointed out that her desire for an open marriage showed she didn't care about his marital status, and told her again to move on and file for divorce. As I got up to leave, Ariana followed me, visibly upset, wringing her hands and crying. At the door she stopped, looked at me with tear-filled eyes, and asked me to tell the girls she loved them and was sorry. I agreed to pass on the message, but made it clear that I wasn't giving up. I wasn't filing for divorce because I didn't want one. I wanted her to come home. She called me closed-minded and expressed regret that she hadn't seen this coming. She kept saying she loved me and wanted to keep trying. I was too tired to argue. I saw her out, took a moment to collect myself, and called Mila. She brought the girls home but didn't come in. Serena and Elena were even more upset with their mother than before, if that was possible. I knew they wouldn't want to hear Ariana's message, so I decided to hold off for now. 2 days later, Ariana showed up around 4:30 with dinner. She'd made chicken tetrazzini with French-cut green beans and a big basket of garlic bread. Elena opened the door, and when Ariana tried to hug her, Elena stiff-armed her. Ariana greeted me, calling me baby, but Elena called out for my attention. I heard Ariana apologizing, professing her love, and saying she missed me. Elena cut her off, refusing to listen and telling her to stay away. Ariana was visibly shaken, nearly collapsing. I took the basket of food from her and led her to the sofa, where she buried her face in her hands, sobbing about how much she was hated. I acknowledged that what she did to the girls was hurtful and doubted they would ever trust her again. Despite feeling sorry for her, I emphasized that rebuilding any relationship with the girls was her responsibility, not theirs or mine. She mentioned making dinner and looked at me pleadingly. Despite knowing she brought it on herself, I decided to help. I offered to talk to the girls while she found the dishes in the kitchen. Upstairs, the girls were furious, incredulous that Ariana thought feeding them would make everything okay. Serena was livid, stating that Ariana had destroyed our family. I sympathized with Serena, explaining that Ariana had thrown a grenade into our lives and now had to face the consequences. Despite Ariana's belief that I was the problem, I reassured the girls that my love for them hadn't changed. I gave them the choice to stay with me or be with their mother, stressing that my love for them was unwavering. Elena, refusing to eat with her mother, said she'd rather die. The girls confirmed their decision to stay with me, and we hugged. I proposed going down to eat with their mother and trying to be civil. Elena asked if that's what I wanted, and I told her it was, as long as they avoided being mean. They agreed to be civil, but intended to make their feelings clear. The dinner was extremely awkward. Ariana tried to talk to the girls, but they responded with curt, one-word answers. After the meal, we cleaned up, packed Ariana's dishes, and she got ready to leave. When Ariana asked Serena for a hug, Serena refused, saying Ariana was no longer her mother. Both girls went to their rooms without another word. Ariana was devastated, and it took her about half an hour to compose herself enough to leave. Despite feeling a bit sorry for her, I took no responsibility for the situation. In fact, I found some satisfaction in how things were unfolding, relishing every moment of it. Ariana continued to come over about once a week, and each time the girls shattered her hopes. She never filed for divorce and kept trying to convince me to move back in with her. After 6 months, I finally filed. When the divorce was finalized, I think Ariana finally realized it was over. The court granted her visitation rights, but somehow, every time she planned to visit, something came up to prevent it. I hope she found someone who suited her open lifestyle. As for me, I remained unmarried, dedicating my life solely to my girls.